In this video, I'm gonna answer the million-dollar question that often gets overcomplicated: how to build muscle and lose body fat at the same time, otherwise known as a body recomposition. Now, for you to completely understand this, first I'm gonna dispel the common myths about building muscle and fat loss, and then I'm gonna go into my biggest pieces of advice on how to do a body recomp that I actually share with some of my clients in my one-on-one fitness coaching program. And then lastly, I'm gonna explain who a body recomp is ideally for and what your expectations should be. So if you're curious about how you can make the process of getting to your fitness goals, achieving that dream physique more efficient and surprisingly more simple and easy, definitely want to stay tuned and keep on watching. Let's go. All right, starting off with the biggest misconception about the dieting end of things when it comes to fitness. If you're under the assumption that you cannot build muscle without being in a caloric surplus, you are dead wrong. While your diet does play a permissive role in building muscle, and being in a caloric deficit will help your body ensure it has more than enough resources than it needs to actually build muscle, it is not a requirement. Now, the real requirements goes like this. At the top, the most important factor is providing the stimulus to signal to the body to build muscle, most commonly via resistance training, or in this case, lifting weights. Think about it, if you're only in a caloric surplus but you're not lifting weights, well, you're just gonna be getting fat. So we have working out at the top. Now, one step below that, we start talking about more of the dieting end of things. The most important thing in this case is gonna be getting your protein intake in. Ideally, at the very least, getting around 0.7 grams of protein per pound of lean body weight. However, getting up closer to the 1 gram per pound of lean body weight is my personal recommendation for those that are not in a calorie surplus. You see, the main resource your body will need to build muscle is protein. So if there's one thing to focus on in your diet, it's definitely gonna be getting that protein intake in. And as you know, we can hit that 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight without being in a caloric surplus. So we have working out consistently at the top, and then we have that protein intake. One step slightly down below that is gonna be your carbohydrate intake. Consuming an adequate amount of carbs will help keep your glycogen stores full. Now, glycogen stores is essentially stored energy in the muscle. Imagine like a gas tank. Basically, your muscle can push the hardest if the glycogen stores are filled. And this is where your total caloric intake starts to really impact how much muscle you're building. However, we're gonna get to that later. While you're not gonna be maximizing your potential to build muscle as much as possible if you're in a caloric deficit, it is still definitely possible. You see, don't take my word for it. There was a study that was conducted which basically had 3 groups. One eating at maintenance, one eating in a 5% surplus, and one eating in a 15% surplus. They all were following the same workout routine, and at the end of the study, they all had pretty similar hypertrophy outcomes, with the 15% surplus group seeing marginally more muscle growth in the biceps specifically, but also seeing a way greater amount of body fat gain. So what we can extrapolate from this is, sure, a surplus can probably marginally impact your ability to build muscle and lead to more muscle growth, but it surely will lead to way more fat gain, especially as your surplus gets way above your maintenance. But okay, enough of that. So now that we have an understanding that you can build muscle without being in a surplus, let's talk about how you can build muscle and lose body fat at the same time. Now, there's no such thing as a body recomp workout program. A body recomp concerns more of the dieting end of things. In general, the workout side largely stays the same regardless of whether you're bulking, cutting, or body recomping. Now, first off, to understand how to do a body recomp, you need to understand where it falls in the spectrum of diets. So first, I want you to imagine this spectrum. All the way on the left side, you have a calorie deficit. Let's call it a 1,000 calorie deficit. All the way on the right side, you have a 1,000 calorie surplus. And then in the center at 0, you have maintenance. This is where you're neither in a caloric surplus or a deficit. Okay, so you have the spectrum, imagine. Now, I'm gonna explain 5 different people representing 5 different common goals. Trust me, this is gonna make sense. Person number 1 is a teenager. He's super skinny, like 8% body fat with not a lot of muscle at all. His goal is to build muscle at all costs, but he's not the brightest person, so against what the experts recommend, he decides to do a dirty bulk and eat in a huge caloric surplus. So he goes here on the scale. Now, person number 2 is his friend. He's equally as skinny, 8% body fat, but he's pretty smart. He takes the time to do his research and learns, hey, it's actually a blessing to be naturally this lean. His goal is to build muscle while minimizing fat gain along the way. He doesn't care to lose body fat, but he doesn't necessarily want to gain it. So he goes here. He's doing a lean bulk. And moving on to person number 3. He's been lifting for several years. He's actually a bodybuilder. He's coming off a bulk where he got to a pretty high body fat, and now he's prepping for a show in a few months and needs to get super lean, specifically stage lean. He knows it's temporary, so he goes on a traditional cut, which would fall all the way here. And then we have person number 4. He's been lifting for a few years and he's happy with the body fat percentage he's at. He looks pretty good. But he wants to continue to build muscle without having to worry about gaining fat. So he ends up main gaining. He falls here. And that brings me on to person number 5, who is skinny fat. He's either just starting out in the gym or is on and off with the gym, just not consistent. He's not sure what to do. He wants to lose fat, but also wants to definitely build more muscle. He's not a competitive bodybuilder. He just wants to look and feel better. But lucky for him, his friend watches this exact video and convinces him to body recomp. That can be you. So in order to body recomp, he eats in a small caloric deficit and prioritizes progressing in the gym like any of the other groups. He falls here. You see, a body recomp is essentially a slow cut. From the calorie perspective, you're in a small caloric deficit. Now, this is actually a really common scenario for a lot of my clients in my one-on-one fitness coaching program. I'm gonna pop up some transformations on screen right now, but as you see, many of them were able to body recomp along the way. And they literally followed this protocol, right? From a dieting perspective, you wanna be around the 250 calorie deficit mark, but definitely under 500 calories. This is a rough estimate. There's gonna be some individual differences, but to give a rough calculation, if you were to track, that's what it will look like. And then of course, the second factor is work out consistently as if you were bulking. And if you are looking for more personal guidance to get to your fitness goals, custom workout programs, what to eat, so nutrition advice, weekly check-ins, and basically the ability to ask any questions you have, then definitely consider applying for my one-on-one fitness coaching program. You definitely wanna get in before New Year's because New Year's is gonna be pretty hectic. You wanna get in now, basically in case I'm forced to increase my prices because the demand just kind of explodes. So with that said, link in the description, let's get back in the video. Now, first off, because you're in a deficit, you wanna make sure you're keeping your protein intake as high as possible. I like to be on the conservative end and aim for at least 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body weight. So keep in mind, this isn't your full body weight, especially if you're at a really high body fat percentage. Let's say above 25%, perhaps it's better to go by your centimeters in height. So to clarify that, eating 1 gram of protein per centimeter in height. Now, the second thing you wanna do, which is equally as obvious in my opinion, is you wanna make sure you're actually training hard in the gym. Again, this means training relatively close to failure, at least within RIR of 2 is my golden standard. On top of that, as you become stronger, you need to increase the resistance, meaning you should be looking to progressive overload on your lifts. If not by weights, then by reps. If not by reps, then by slowing the tempo down the eccentric. There's different ways you can progressive overload, and you definitely should be doing so if you're trying to maximize muscle building regardless of your diet. Now, if you don't want to track calories, the good news is that a body recomposition is going to be easier to carry out than a traditional cut because the calorie deficit is going to be smaller. So the good news is that I've seen many people carry out a body recomp without even tracking and just approaching things intuitively. So my advice is focus the majority of what you eat on these 3 things. 1, lean sources of protein. 2, fruits and vegetables. And 3, complex carbohydrates, for example, sweet potato. On top of that, something that can also keep your appetite in control is staying hydrated. So make sure you're drinking a lot of water. I recommend carrying a big water bottle around with you, just sipping on it throughout the day. At the very least, definitely bring it to the gym so you have something to sip on. Now let's get on the juicy part. Who should be body recomping in the first place? And to be completely honest, it is probably most of y'all watching. If 1, you have any desire to lose body fat as well as build muscle, and 2, you're not restricted to getting lean by a certain time, so you're not a competitive bodybuilder that needs to get ready for a show on a set date, then I would highly recommend you take advantage of the opportunity to actually body recomp, get down to a lower body fat percentage while still being able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and make progress on the muscle building end of things along the way. And then once you reach your desired body fat percentage, then you can reassess and think, okay, maybe I'm a lean bulk now, maybe I'm just gonna main gain because I don't wanna gain body fat. The point is, if you have the desire to get to a more aesthetic place with your physique, then a body recomp, in my opinion, is kind of a no-brainer, especially if you're a beginner. And even if you care more about building muscle rather than losing body fat, ironically, I would tell you this. If you're currently above 20% body fat, the biggest way to actually look more muscular, ironically, is going to be actually decreasing that body fat percentage so you can actually see the muscle underneath. Using myself as an example, I'm literally 133 pounds right now. I only look the way I do right now, not only because, yes, okay, I've been training for 9.5 years. Of course, I do prioritize my lifts and I was able to build muscle, but it's also because I'm at a low body fat percentage. If I was above 15% body fat, I guarantee that my physique will look drastically different. And if you're looking for more personal guidance on your fitness goals, I've helped hundreds of people transform their body at this point, and I would tell you, a good majority of them, I would say the vast majority of them, was able to body recomp to some sort of degree. Now, as a bonus, if you've been struggling with being consistent consistent with your diet, or honestly just fitness in general, a body recomp could be a good choice because ultimately it is easier to adhere to. This is because a body recomp is going to be less restrictive than a traditional cut because the calorie deficit isn't going to be as low, meaning overall it should be a more sustainable approach compared to the traditional bulk cut cycle. Now lastly, it is not all sunshine and rainbows here with a body recomp. Here are some expectations you should have if you're gonna do a body recomp. First, the biggest one is that you're not gonna be losing weight as quickly as on a traditional cut. This is because ultimately, because your deficit is smaller, inherently you're not gonna be losing body fat as quickly. Now, you shouldn't look at this as a bad thing because ultimately the slower you take the process, generally the more sustainable. And if you have any goals to maintain your physique after you reach your desired goal, then you should be approaching things sustainably. On top of that, if you're measuring your weight at like the month level, it could be the case that you're also building muscle while also losing body fat out of the way. So if you lose 5 pounds of fat, but you build 2 pounds of muscle, well, that's only a net decrease in weight of 3 pounds in that case. This is why it becomes so important to measure your progress along the way, namely taking progress photos weekly, tracking the body weight of course, but also tracking your body measurements, so circumference for your chest, waist, this sort of stuff. This is exactly the approach I take with my clients, so we can retroactively see, okay, is he like in a good range where he's body recomping, or is he like in a surplus, or is he just in a huge deficit and we need to increase calories? Second thing you need to keep in mind is you might eventually stop losing weight. Now, this can be, like I mentioned before, you did a combination of lose body fat as well as build muscle. This can usually be ruled out if you're tracking your weight weekly, but if you're inconsistent with it, then this could be the case. And the second reason this might be happening is your body adjusted to the deficit amount. Now, naturally, your body will always want to naturally adjust to the amount of food that you're consuming, and this is the same reason why someone on a traditional cut who's eating at super low calories might eventually stop losing weight if they do it long enough. Now, the good news with the body recomp is because the deficit's smaller, you have more room to continue to decrease and continue the diet without approaching malnutrition territory or without getting to the point where you start noticing that your lifts are decreasing, which again, like I mentioned, that is a red flag that the deficit might be too hard. Lastly, here's a warning so you know whether you're dieting too hard and might be approaching more of a traditional cut rather than a body recomposition. And the main indicating factor is going to be your strength. If you start losing strength, or if you're an absolute beginner and you make no progress on the strength end of things, that will probably tell you that, okay, maybe your deficit's a little bit too big. You see, with a body recomposition, the muscle building end of things really hinges on you being able to progress with your strength and actually apply progressive overload. In other words, if you've been consistently training but you notice that you're actually getting weaker, then in that case, you're actually heading in the wrong direction. And the deficit just might be too large. And then if you're a beginner within the first 6 months of training, you should be seeing some sort of progress on the strength end of things, or else you'll probably run into the same issue. So in that case, definitely add some calories, monitor your weight to make sure you're still in deficit, but also keep track of that strength to see that at least there's some sort of upward trajectory. All right, so now you know exactly how you can build muscle and lose body fat at the same time with a body recomposition. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Leave a comment down below to see if you're actually gonna be body recomping. Let me know about it. Hit subscribe if you wanna level up your physique. And don't forget to hit the bell notification, get these videos right to you as they come out. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.